So, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jide Banwo, and this is a conversation it's been coming a long time, not just for rugby fans in Nigeria, but for every African sport lovers who dares to dream bigger. Rugby union, a sport of grit, strategy, physicality, and brotherhood, a sport that South Africa has turned into a global religion. Three Rugby World Cup titles, a Springbok jersey that carries the weight of an entire continent. And yet, just 4,000 kilometers north of Johannesburg, Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, a nation that produced world-class athletes in football, athletics, boxing, wrestling, but is still climbing when it comes to rugby. But here is what is fascinating. According to the World Rugby, Nigeria is currently the fastest growing rugby nation on the planet, sixth in the world for overall growth. 40 schools in Lagos alone have already adopted the sport. A nation or a national league is being rebuilt. The women's side, the Green Falcons, just qualified for the 20, that was the last one, the 2025 Rugby League World Cup series. The momentum is real. So why is Nigeria at the World Rugby? Or why are they not at the World Rugby yet? That's the question. What is holding the ship back, and what exactly or where exactly are we headed? To answer these questions, I have the privilege of sitting with a man who played the game at the highest of the continent for over a decade. A fly half, a captain, a leader, and who now carries the responsibility of developing the sport he loves from the administrative seat. Is the general manager of the Nigerian Rugby Football Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Azeez Ladipo, you are welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And
My pleasure to be here.
we've been looking forward to having you on here. And thank you for your time that you are able to give us. So let's just dive right into it. So the question goes thus. You captained the Stallion for 6 years. Now you are running the federation. The federation that stands out, the same players out. How different does rugby feels from the other side of the touchline?
Thank you very much, Banwo, for having me. And thank you very much for the question. Let me just quickly make one or two corrections. I want to thank the Nigerian Rugby Football Federation Board, headed by Dr. Ademola Are, who's the president of the federation, for appointing me general manager. That was 2022. And, I owe it to them, entrusting me with the responsibility to, have the planning and implementation of the strategic, plan for Nigeria Rugby. So I want to thank them first, and I also want to thank you for having me on the show again. So I would say that the difference is profound, really. Captaining the team and being on the other side of admin, and it's a very humbling experience. For me as captain, my responsibility was, to have a group of men in front of me before a game. I could look into their eyes and adjust my voice, to the right tune, to motivate them, and read the energy in the room as well as before a match. I read the energy in the room, and I'm able to motivate them and gear them up for that particular game. And sometimes we're victorious, sometimes we're not. But at the end of the day, I've done my job. And I also play my part on the pitch. But as general manager, I'm responsible for the entire ecosystem alongside the general secretary of the federation. that produces these men, that also make the strategic planning, that also deal with the governance, the structure, the funding part, which is very difficult, the pathway system, which enables a 6-year-old boy touching the ball for the first time aspire to play high performance, which is like the highest level. There are many ladders, many obstacles on the way. Some of them could end up not getting to that high performance level. Some of them, drop out from university. Some of them, can't deal with the physicality involved. They have to drop out to maybe touch rugby. Some of them drop out to refereeing, officiating, strength and conditioning, medical, journalism, reportage and what have you. So the pathway structure is there, and we just have a room for everybody that wants to, partake in rugby. So a responsibility for the ecosystem, you cannot simply, just shrug it off. You have to lead by example, and in the boardroom, when you're on the pitch, you have to lead by example. You have to, carry the ball forward. You have to, encourage the team when they're not doing well. But in the boardroom, it's a different. You can't simply just shout or and do what you do on the pitch. It's a different scenario. And in the boardroom or in the email thread, sometimes I have to respond to about 10 emails per day. Just trying to fix things up and trying to make things work. So what I can say in all this is that playing captain taught me a lot. It taught me one thing that translates into being able to motivate a team, being able to get results. Um, and for me to be able to fit in perfectly into this role, you do not wait for perfect conditions. Sometimes it's raining, the team has to play, and you lead with what you have at that point. And you bring people with you, and you find a way to win that game, or to get them to apply and perform at the peak of their abilities. And I remember preparing for critical Africa Cup match, and knowing we were under resourced, we didn't have the right, selection. We didn't have the right camp at that time, and less equipment, fewer professional players on my team. We were playing against Impala of South Africa, but we were prepared for the intensity. We believed in what we could, what we were building, and we competed. We did not always win all those games. For example, in Impala, we scored first, and what came after that was a massacre. Because we scored first and we looked for the trouble. And what came after that was a real massacre on our team. But what I'm just trying to say is that that spirit of discipline, committed effort in spite of limited means, is the spirit that I've tried to bring into the federation. I tell our staff and board all the time, we do not have the luxury of excuses. We just do the work.
Okay. Thanks for that. There was a follow-up, or there is a follow-up question which you have answered whilst I was listening to you, which take us to this point. There are lots of things which you have mentioned on there, and like I said, most of the questions or the answers to the question, the follow-up question, you have answered it. So when you were appointed in 2022, one of your tasks was helping to get Nigerian ban lifted by the World Rugby. What was Nigerian banned for, and what did that process, teach you about the state of rugby governance in the country?
Well, Nigeria was suspended by World Rugby in 2021. I think it was around April, May, June, like mid-year period, Q2 of 2021. And following the international bodies, they termed the problem they termed then was governmental interference, and specifically the dissolution of all the sports federation in the country, including the NRFF. So, it was then the Ministry of Sports, headed by Honorable Sunday Dare. World Rugby has very clear rules. Government must not interfere in the internal governance of its member federations. So when the principle of that principle was violated, a ban follows automatically. And also there were some shenanigans that went on, within the rugby stakeholders at the time that fast tracked that ban on Nigeria. And so we lost our ability to compete at the Rugby World Cup 2023 qualifiers, and it was a real setback, big setback for us. We couldn't compete in the 2023 World Cup qualifiers. The Birmingham Commonwealth Games rugby qualifiers, we also couldn't compete. I was hoping that that would be like my last, one of my last competitions that I would attend as a player. I'd longed to participate in the Commonwealth Games, but it wasn't meant to be because of that ban. I tried all my possible best to try and rally around, get players to plead with the government at the time, but it didn't work out. So those were real tangible losses for us as players at the time. What the process taught me was that governance infrastructure in Nigerian rugby was fragile, and not because people were not committed, but because the institutional walls between sport and government had not been properly built. So that then, informed our decision, our collective decision to support the current president, which is Dr. Ademola Are, who was there, a former director in the Ministry of Sport, to come in and try and bridge that gap, that reoccurrence of bans. We needed to stop it. So one of the best ways to do that was to support his bid as president. And since he resumed in 2021, he has been able to stabilize the federation. We've had, we're now stable. We steadied the ship, and like you said, our immediate brief was, rebuilding those walls and making sure that we get, reenacted back into world rugby, and we got to work. We held a lot of meetings, series of meetings, and I have to seize this opportunity to thank the president of Rugby Afrique, Mr. Herbert Mensah of Ghana. He was instrumental in the reinstatement efforts of getting Nigeria back on board, and we are forever grateful to him. He went the extra mile to ensure that happened. I was also part of that process, even though I didn't hold any position at the time. I was just a mere, ex-player. But World Rugby always wanted me to be part of that, negotiation and discussions on what Nigeria needed to do to get back. So, so we had to rebuild. We had to get our constitution sorted and re-ratified. So we had to re-ratify the constitution, and by March of 2022, with delegates from across the country engaging the Ministry, Rugby Africa, and World Rugby simultaneously, and demonstrating to the international body that the federation was properly constituted and independently governed. By the 10th of November 2022, at the World Rugby Council meeting in Auckland, I won't forget that date, in New Zealand, Nigeria was unanimously reinstated. And I commend the board once again, Dr. Are, for the continuous grit that they showed at the time. It was a fight that required extraordinary patience, diplomacy, and persistence. So, how much damage did that ban do to sports credibility and players and sponsors and government? I'll tell you, it was devastating for us. It took us back, many years, and we're trying to come back from that, and we're still trying to come back from that ban, because, like I told you, we missed the cycle, not just the funding cycle. We also missed the opportunity to qualify for the World Cup 2023. We missed the opportunity to qualify for the Commonwealth Games 2024 in was it Scotland or Australia? So so those things, players were deprived of competitive opportunities at the worst possible time, during the years when their careers should have been flourishing. So sponsors would naturally, ask you why invest in a federation that is going through all that. So, and government officials who were not already rugby believers, some of them, they didn't really know the story. So the damage was really real. But I would say that the way President Are and the board navigated the reinstatement transparently and professionally actually helped rebuild credibility. So we're coming back stronger with a new logo. We had to get it. We had to rebrand the whole thing, get a new strategic plan, and we had a partnership with Flowvale, and then sent a message that Nigeria Rugby, was back, and that was how we were able to navigate that journey. But thank God, things
Yeah.
are starting to normalize.
Well, thanks for that, because during the course of your response now, so there are lots of things that went wrong, and it's affected rugby federation in Nigeria. And looking back now, when you were appointed, and what rugby is saying now, that Nigeria has been listed as one of the fastest growing rugby nations on the earth. That's a very remarkable feat, from what you've been saying, from all the things Dr. Ari have been able to do. That's the president of Rugby Federation Nigeria. But the question remains, that what does the growth actually looks like on the ground, in the community,
Um,
the school, the club? What the growth? What does it really look like?
well, when you say growth, I would say efforts. We put in a lot of efforts to try and bring back the culture, the tradition, because you know what they say. It's very easy to bring down the house. It can take you less than 10, 2 minutes to put a dynamite and bring down the house. But for you
Yes.
to reenact that building, it's going to take a lot of planning. You
Yes.
have to go back and do excavation,
Mhm.
and all that. So, World Rugby officially listed us as one of the fastest growing nation because of the work that has gone in since our reinstatement. So, alongside Belgium, I think Singapore, Ghana, Zambia, Spain, I think. So that recognition meant something. It was not bestowed; it was earned actually. And like I always say, the headline, you know, is not a program. We on the ground, growth looks like this. Let me just take you through what growth looks like for us at the moment. So we have introduced rugby to over 40 schools in Lagos state alone. The ones that have started years before now and the ones that are just joining.
Yeah.
Um, our Rugby Rising Play Nigeria program has reached 20 states as we
Mm.
speak. Introducing rugby to over 6,700 young girls between the age of 10 and 18 across about 70 schools
Mm.
and communities, because we're not leaving out the communities. We're not just focusing on schools. Some children don't have rugby in their schools, but where they live, in the playground that they have, there's rugby. So they would usually like join in and enjoy it. We appointed 15 coaches the first time, and then we were able to scale after we had mastered the program. We scaled up to about 22 coaches. Um, we held the national women's rugby sevens tournament in Asaba in 2024, which was a really, really good one. Great turnout from states that I didn't even expect would be able to perform, like Benue State, like Abia State, like Anambra. It was a really, really good one with about 12 teams participating in that tournament. Um, and we also, did um, we launched the referees coaching and officiating program. And what we did was very, very practical and um, foundational. So what we did was we went to World Rugby, and then we with their assistance they came down to Nigeria about 3 times in 2 years,
Mm.
and they were able to upskill our workforce. So before then, what we had was people with IRB certifications. Now, IRB certifications was when World Rugby was still International Rugby Board. That was a long time ago. I mean, that was pre 2010
Okay.
thereabouts. So those certifications and the coaching models and coaching styles were outdated. So
Okay.
we needed to
Okay.
bring forth modern coaching patterns and coaching styles, and we had to upskill them. And we were upskilling them with one thing in mind, for us to be able to be independent, because you can't keep bringing world rugby educators into the country. It costs a lot, and it's scheduled. You can't have them all the time. But what our target was for us to be able to be independent and be able to do it on our own. And by year two, by the end of year two, we had about 6 educators of our own.
Wow.
2 in coaching, 1 in officiating, 1 in strength and conditioning, and 3 in medical. And medical is very, very important, because that's the major player welfare mechanism. Because in world rugby, player welfare is topmost of the priorities, and on top of that is concussion management. So being able to manage injuries and ensuring that everybody plays rugby in a safe
Yeah.
place. So for us, for the first time, in a very, very long time, we came back. They gave us a wild card to come back into pre-qualifiers 2023. Rugby Africa gave us that, and we're able to come up with a team that made it to the final. From number 24 ranked team in Africa, we moved up to number 11 just by one tournament. And we were able to eliminate everyone else in front of us. And we got to the finals with Algeria. And then we qualified automatically for the Olympic qualifiers.
Wow.
That was the Paris Olympic qualifiers
Wow.
in Zimbabwe. This tournament that we played was in Mauritius. But we then qualified for the tournament in Zimbabwe, Harare, where we then went there and got to the quarterfinals and bowed out to South after meeting South Africa in the quarterfinals. So we were able to now successfully move from 11 to number 8, just within the space of a few months. So, and I'm talking 7 aside, rugby sevens. And so, through a deliberate phased strategy that combines central, federation programming with state level activation, we're also concentrating on the states. We cannot do it alone from Abuja. You have to combine and collaborate to have exponential impact. So we needed to empower the states, and we were able to get balls. Rugby balls was a big challenge. We were able to get 1,000 balls in to boost development, because when I was newly appointed GM, everybody was asking me for rugby balls. One rugby ball is not that cheap, so we had to look for a means, due to the network of people that we know, and we reached out and we were able to bring in those developments. And we're looking forward to more, bringing back the Get Into Rugby 2.0. There's also the Laureus and IOC Self-Support partnership conversation going on at the moment, which we want to bring into Nigeria, and a lot more. So, a lot more is still coming, and these are the ways that we've been able to work. We're also able to restart our women's program. So when we went to the All Africa Games in Ghana, rather than fielding a men's team, we decided to field a women's team in order to try and restart and resuscitate that program. We started in 2009, and the girls hadn't played since 2009. So we ensured that they played again in 2024, and we're hoping that we'll be able to now to get them out to play again, because we believe that women's rugby is our low-hanging fruit, and that we should try and push and get them playing once again on the continent. It's unfortunate we couldn't get them to play in Tunisia because of the costs that was actually, that we had to cover. A lot of players and coaches, about 31, everything running into about over 50 million in flights. So we couldn't manage that, but we're hoping that we'll be able to do something around women's rugby, which is very dear to our heart.
So thanks for it. You gave a very elaborate response to this, and there are lots of things. Like I said, you've covered some of the follow-up questions, which I have on there. I don't know how you've been managing to do that, but most of the questions that I needed to ask you, you've been able to to answer that. So now I'm going to go into funding, because most of all these projects, there are sub projects which you mentioned in your response. Most of traveling, going all over the country. So I'm going to go into funding, sponsorship, and governance. That's the question that I'm going on under now. So you mentioned the NRFF signed a 3-year MOU with Flowerville Consulting in 2024. As a commercial partner, what has the partnership delivered in practically terms so far? Because all those things that you mentioned, definitely there has to be funding involved. What are they doing, and what are the government doing to support all these important projects? The female arm of the rugby union, schools, coaching, development, training. So how does Flowerville Consulting, what are they doing? Are they been able to support you? In what way have they been able to support you, and what way has the government been able to support too?
So let me say that the Flowerville partnership signed ahead of Mauritius in 2024 was a strategic milestone for us, for the Federation. Mr. Akwaolu Arushawe, MD of Flowerville, came in with a clear mandate to create a dedicated commercial channel to make rugby one of the most popular sports in Nigeria. The MOU also included unveiling the Nigerian Rugby's redesigned logos and signal a fresh identity to accompany fresh ambition for us, to be honest. So in practical terms, the partnership brought in a little bit of structure. We saw that, and to commercial conversations, opening doors with corporates who might not have engaged with us directly before. So, and I'll say Flowerville was able to help us with, for example, when we're negotiating with Umbro, our kit sponsor, Flowerville was able to, facilitate the design of the kit by Plus 234 agency, headed by T Breeze and his sister Tenny. I think her name is Tenny Zacchaeus. Tenny Zacchaeus and the brother. So these guys were.
Sorry, did you say T-Bliss?
So the brother's name is Tony Zacchaeus, and the sister is Tenny Zacchaeus. So both, I'll just use let me forgo their nickname, but use their username. So they run Plus 234 agency, and they were able to design a very fantastic kit. Let me also say that I don't know if you know Grace Ladoja. So they work together with Grace Ladoja. Grace Ladoja and these 234 guys were also instrumental in the design of the Nigerian Super Eagles kit for Nike. So that was the 2018 one and the subsequent ones, I think. And so it was a real good leap for us from where we were, moving into a new horizon. And it hasn't been easy for Flowerville themselves. They've tried a lot to get us sponsorship and what have you, but it's not a very, very easy terrain. I'm not making excuses for them, but so far their impact hasn't really been 100%. When you talk about the results on the ground, but whether they are putting effort every day, we can see that they're doing their best to provide the roadmap that gives sponsors the confidence that for them to invest in an organized institution with clear objective. It is very early. I can't say it's early anymore because it's almost 3 years, but the foundation that we are building is the right one, and we'll continue to build on it genuinely. And we have been able to receive some genuine interest, but not yet converted into the scale that we need. So there's awareness and admiration. What we are working to demonstrate is that return on investment, visibility, and the CSR alignment and brand association with the rights, corporates. So, but we're going to get there soon. We're not very far off.
Yeah. So thanks for saying this, but I'm going to reiterate on one of the um, questions which I asked you, which I'm sure you just omitted it. Government funding for rugby versus football in Nigeria is not even a comparison. We all know
Yeah,
football dominates everything. Is the federation getting a meaningful support from the Ministry of Sports? And how do you make a case for rugby at the table? That is what you forgot to respond to.
yeah. So remember, I told you Dr. Are used to work in the ministry and has experience. He's a very experienced sport administrator. So I can tell you for a fact that the um, the response from government has been encouraging, a lot better than what it used to be. I can seize this opportunity to thank the leadership of the NSC, headed by Mr. Sheu Diko and Mr. Bukola Lokpade, for the great work that they've been doing. So there's a renewed hope in that area that sports will get the right attention and funding that it needs, because sports is really nothing without funding. So we're very hopeful, and we've been getting some assistance from them. For example, when the balls came in, the NSC took charge and helped us to clear it at the ports, and that showed, that shows commitment to sports development. One or two other things, when we went to Ghana, they were able to support the boys to play last year, and we're really hoping to be able to engage them. We're engaging them more. We have a lot on their table. Most of our requests gets the right attention, and we're hoping for the best really from them.
Thanks for that, because I'm hoping the Nigerian thing. People are always saying we're hoping that Nigeria won't happen to you. So it's a good thing that you are able to clarify the fact that the government is supporting rugby. That's that is very reassuring for what you just said now. So we're moving on, because I know we have a lot to cover. So we're gonna be moving fast, and I like the fact that the way you are responding, and which brings us to Nigeria and South Africa, the comparison, because people have been wondering. South Africa has won Rugby World Cup 3 times. The club system, the school system, the provincial structures are the envy of world rugby everywhere. When you look at South Africa's model, what is one thing Nigeria must borrow and build right on right now?
I think it's the school system, to be honest. South Africa's dominance begins in schools.
Okay.
So you have some traditional rugby schools in South Africa: JP Boys, Grey College, Paul Roos, Boland, and Lambo. So where rugby is not just a sport, it's a cultural institution. It's a tradition for them. Children arrive at provincial and then Springbok level, having played thousands of hours of structured, competitive, and high level, rugby from age 12 or 13. So, the technical foundation is immense before they ever see a professional contract.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't. I've been to South Africa and played against University of Cape Town. I played against Métis, that's Stellenbosch universities. I played against a lot of teams. I played against, So what I noticed is that, take Unilag for example, or a university in Nigeria. They have different halls where students live, where they stay. Each hall in South Africa has a team, and each hall is capable of giving some countries a beating. I'm not even talking about the school team. I'm not talking about Unilag. I'm not talking about Unilag team. I'm talking about the hall. Let's say Fajri Hall, for example.
Really?
Yeah. So each hall is capable of giving many African national teams a beating of their lives. So that's how serious rugby is in South Africa. So just to give you that context. To give you that context. So that's how serious rugby is in South Africa. So, for example, I told you we played Boland against Boland the last time. Boland are like a Cell C. They were Cell C champions, which is like the FA Cup or Carling Cup champions of South Africa that year. And they came to the competition in the Africa Cup in Botswana in 2013, 2014, and they beat everybody. They beat all the national teams. They are not even the Western Province. They are not even you're not talking MTN Bulls or Sharks, Chelsea Sharks. You're talking about a team that won the FA Cup. So South African rugby is, it's not a coincidence. It is result of decades of investment in coaches, facilities, curriculum integration. The single most important thing Nigeria can do right now is deepen the school's rugby program. Have more qualified coaches in schools. PE teachers, how do we, develop them and upskill them properly for them to be able to coach the game, inter-house school competitions, and more pathways from school rugbies. So once they leave that school, there needs to be a club close to them where they can now integrate into that club. So if they're able to do that, you then have that pathway continuing. That person is not going to stop playing all of a sudden because, for example, we have a big challenge. When we coach them in secondary school and they go off to uni, sometimes we lose that player because 4 years in uni, no rugby, there's no way you can't buy that in the market. So that's why we've gone to Nuga. We're speaking with the technical team. They're giving us some approvals. We're now looking to now go into the universities and be in the next Nuga games. If we're able to do that, then we're the pathway, the spine of the pathway is then restructured to continue into high performance. So for us, it's a lot of work. We're doing that with Rugby Rising at the moment. The program is gearing up. It's getting popular. But I do not believe that we need generations to meet up with South Africa because South Africa started from a very different context. So for us, theirs was structured by the apartheid. The apartheid, in a way they gave certain communities immense resources and others, they gave them nothing.
Yeah.
Nigeria, we are starting from a more level playing field domestically. We live in a world of accelerated development where social media, digital coaching tools are available now. And global networks, people can reach out to a coach and get trained, on the internet. So we can fast track things. Japan rebuilt their program, and roughly 15 years, they started competing well at the World Cup. So we are studying that model of Japan very carefully with the right investment and right governance. Nigeria's timeline to genuine World Cup contention is shorter than that of South Africa, when you look at the analogy. But we also have the advantage of the diaspora community.
Yeah.
Nigeria has a huge diaspora community. Yeah. Many of them are now rugby professionals. One of them captains England. So
I don't want to go into that because that's my next
question. Exactly.
That's my next question. You've already started on it. So you made mention of diaspora now. And like I said, I'm going to go into it now. Since you made mention of it. To be honest, what really gave me an awareness into this discussion, which I'm having with you now, or about Nigerian Rugby Federation, is the video that went viral about some of the people that are in diaspora, some of the rugby players that are in diaspora, that they were, what's your Nigerian name? What's your, it is made mention of their English name, then they're Nigerian. So, and whilst I posted this on my social media platform, few people ask me that, do we have, especially Nigerians in diaspora that are living in South Africa, they ask me, do we have a rugby team? I said, my goodness, yes, we do have a rugby team, but people are not aware. So now they are doing well abroad. So the question remains that we have Mario Itoje, which you made mention, which is England captain, and one of the best players in the world. is of Nigerian descent. How does that make you feel as in GM? And how can we make that happen? You know, the people that are here, players that are here, how can we make it happen that they play for at the test level, especially people that are of Nigerian descent? How can we make that happen?
Well, that is already happening. In 2023, when we went off to Mauritius, more than half of that team is diaspora Nigeria, and some of them, you know, because we always try to make sure that we have domestic players in the squad at every point to give it that balance and to also give the guys here something to aspire to. And that's not to say that we compromise on talent or abilities. We have good players here that have. See, the average Nigerian is physically suited for the game of rugby. The speed, the strength, the physique, it suits our idiosyncrasies as Nigerians. So I'll say that, you know, it's already happening. What we're trying to do now is to be able to get the best of them to play for us. There's a little barrier when it comes to UK, United Kingdom. Our players in the United Kingdom in the Premiership, there's what you call the EQP, the England Qualified Player Rule. All of them carrying that British passport are qualified to play for England. And they also carry the Nigerian passport. So now, once they play for Nigeria, they lose that status.
Okay.
And that could cost them their job, could cost them their place in the team. Because now they will now stop being referred to as homegrown talent. They will now be referred to as international. So now when you're an international talent, there's a quota system as to how many international players can start a game, can be in the sport, can have a contract. So it starts to affect those boys. So we've tried to get the RFU to, you know, pipe down a little bit, but it's not working for now. So what we're now doing is that since we can't get the boys in the Premier League, let's come look to the lower leagues. So there's after the Premier League, you have the Championship, you have the National 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So right now we're still getting the guys in the lower end, but if we get more structure and we get more investment, we will be able to get anybody we want. But it's not the same for France. For France, we can get anybody we want. For USA, we can get anyone. For every other country, Ireland, Australia, whatever. But we have the majority of our boys in the UK, and I believe, for example, that we can qualify for the Olympic Games if we want to. If we really structure, if we put our acts together, and we rally around, get our boys buzzing, I think we can do it. Recently, Elliot Obato Imbo, who is the son to one of my big uncles, Uncle Ibi. He plays for Newcastle Falcons, and he has publicly said that he wants to help grow the sport in Nigeria. So it makes me feel two things when you ask me about Maro Itoje and how do I feel. I feel the simultaneous pride as well as urgent determination. So why the pride? Because every time Maro leads England out, one of the greatest rugby nations in the world, there's this piece of Nigeria in that leadership, that athleticism, that intelligence. His parents are Nigerians, his roots are here, and the world sees that what that heritage produces, Nigerian heritage. The determination for me is can be attributed to because we cannot keep the country that produces world-class rugby players for other nations. That is not sustainable as a national rugby system. So we don't have a sustainable national rugby ambition. So Maro's journey happened because he was raised in that environment and nurtured. England school system. He went to Harrow, went to Saracens Academy, that now identified, nurtured, and elevated his talent to what it is, which is extraordinary. Our job here in Nigeria is to build that Nigerian equivalent of that system. So build that environment. How do we do it? It's a lot of work. It's a huge work to do. We're not there yet, but what I'm trying to say is The Rugby Rising Play is one of those. Once we introduce the Get Into Rugby, we'll have a national talent pathway system designed to address those gaps. And one day, Nigeria will produce its own marriage agent, and then wear the green and white, green, white, green. So our position is to be proactive and welcoming. So we walk through our technical staff. For example, our coaches from diaspora, Coach Steve Lewis from the US is originally Scottish. We have assistant coaches over there. We're also building that capacity here to be able to meet up. I think they are now in their level 3 mode. So once they are done with their level 2, they'll be qualified to lead the national teams. That would be the.
So for us, our international contacts are intact. We're identifying those talents, we're bringing them in, integrating them in gradually. And our diaspora is a strategic asset, and we treat it as such. So we have that, we've been able to break the dichotomy. We don't have that bureaucratic obstruction anymore. So we want every player of Nigerian heritage to see playing for the Stallions as an honor and an opportunity. Not an administrative maze or what have you. So the diaspora is very key in our strategy to emerging as a top rugby nation.
Yeah. Thank you for this. But some of the key factors which you mentioned, I think it has similarity with what's happening in football, because there are some of the distance, as in Nigerian distance, that are born here, that at the end of the day, they may not have that opportunity to play. Or
Can you rephrase again? I need to hear you from the beginning.
Okay. I was saying that some of the things which you made mention of, things like having players that are of British they are British citizens but Nigerian descent, that are some of them are reluctant because they don't want to lose some of the opportunities that they have as British citizens playing in England. I think similar thing happens in football, so that people at the end of the day, just like what you said, that you want people to be proud when they want to play for Nigeria. I think the government has a very crucial role, since you made mention that there is nothing like that in France. So that means it's just peculiar to the England rugby or for England players. So there is a role, I think Dr. Are and even the Rugby Afrique, they have things that they need to still give a push. I mean, what happens or what operates in football is, at the end of the day, when a player knows that, they can't feed them to play for England, that is when they now come back to saying that they want to play for Nigeria. I don't think that should be the case. So we should be able to that, and that's why I said the top, the top people or the top officers, the president, the Rugby Afrique or Rugby Africa has crucial roles to play in order to press upon England rugby not to, ban these players when they answer calls, or not to lose what they are entitled to. So that's why that's just the comment that I'm trying to make. Sorry, are you there? Please.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I'm with you.
Because I can't see you. Okay, the video has gone off. So the next question is it's echoing.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next question is about the Green Falcons. So Nigerian women's team. I think you may need to, because I'm hearing myself. Okay, I think it's better now. the Nigerian women team, the Green Falcon, qualified for the 2025 Rugby League World Cup series by beating Kenya for the sole African ticket. That's an historic achievement. Is the women game getting the same investments and institutional support as the men's?
Yeah, well, the Green Falcons' victory over Kenya to claim the sole African ticket for Rugby League. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on, please.
To claim that ticket was genuinely historic. But then I would like to say that, in rugby, we have two codes. We have the Rugby League as well as the Rugby Union, but it's we're all together. So our women's team debuted internationally. They did well. They did well over Ghana. They built extraordinary momentum. And by September 2024, they had beaten Kenya like 22-14 in Nairobi. The federation, so I wouldn't say I wouldn't have much to say about it because it's like another code of rugby. So it's rugby league. We are rugby union.
Okay. So
thank you.
That's good. Thanks for clarifying that. We have a new person in the house. Thelma Davis. Please, can you unmute yourself, please? Thelma Davis. Okay, let's just go on. So.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Hello, Thelma. Can you
is it possible? Thelma.
Oh, Thelma Davis. Thelma, can you introduce yourself and the role you have in this, just for us to know you, your background, please?
Okay. My name is Thelma Davis. I'm currently managing partner, DM Partners. We are a consulting practice in the professional services sector, and we focus on the intersection between sports industry and adjacent markets. When I talk about adjacent markets, we're looking at construction, real estate, entertainment, tourism, the event industry as well, creative economy generally, manufacturing, trading, and industrialization. Azeez Ladipo is a very well-known person or face to me. We've known for a long time now, and I've had the opportunity in a previous career path to have written about the rugby state of rugby in Nigeria. And I'm really glad and excited to join this conversation.
Thank you so much, because I was now I'm trying to see, how you coming into this conversation, but it's a good thing that Azeez Ladipo knows you and you've been relevant to this conversation. So, in your own assessment, generally, what do you think about the rugby development? I'm sure I needed to hear you where you're coming from. So,
Okay.
What do you think about the rugby development in our nation, Nigeria? Are we where we are meant to be? What are the things that we can do that can get us closer to what or where we want to be?
I would say that where we need to be, or where we should head, we should be heading to, is a lot of focus on the professional side of rugby. And when I speak of professional side, I'm referring to professional competitions. The basis that provides for commercialization, the basis that provides for industrialization, which I do know can serve as a pool for mass participation, as a pool for grassroots development of rugby. I know the rugby union's focus primarily has to do with amateur grassroots development. That's their focus. We need to see um, we need to see a drive on the side of pro sports, pro rugby competition, because it's in pro sports. Look, for the in last couple of days, my partners and I, we've been having a series of conversations, and trying to work out the best approach that can ensure the development of sports generally, as an industry, and one significant consideration that we came to is the fact that there's a lot of focus on grassroots development, which is important. It is significant to the growth of any sport around the world. However, there's also the need to take a closer look at the elite side of the sport. The elite side of the sport has all the various layers, the levers that can ensure a continuum in mass participation, a continuum in grassroots development, that is tied to pro sports. If we don't take a look in much closer at pro sports, then we are not creating a pathway for those who come through grassroots development to to because yes, we're looking at a pipeline. We get to look at pipelines, discovering talent, nurturing talent. But what's that pipeline leading to? What's it connected to? Where, if for the athlete that wants to go professional, that wants to go pro, what are the likely outcomes? Is it a case in which they are discovered, then the next thing is to export them? Are we looking at discovery then export? Is that the model being looked at, being considered? But the truth is, if we take that model, when you discover, for instance, say you discover 5,000 talents, and they grow in the skill set as rugby athletes, the question is, how many of them can be exported? Definitely not many. Not many. Let me give a good example. um, KPMG did a study just less than 3 years ago, in the last 3 years, and with focus on football. And their discovery came up with the fact that there are over 500 African players in the top five leagues in Europe. 500 African players in the top five leagues in Europe. Now the question we got to ask is, that's just over 500. And we know that from Nigeria alone, now out of that 500, there are not up to 100 player athletes from Nigeria, not up to 100 player athletes from Nigeria that 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 make up part of that composition. Now, the question is, we have well over, and this is just conservative, we have well over 500,000 talents, football talents here in Nigeria. Where are those players going to fit in? And many of them want to go pro. So what do we need to do? We need to look inward. We need to pay attention to how to build and grow the ecosystem on the home front. We need to see how we can industrialize, commercialize the ecosystem, so that people who cannot be exported, whose talents cannot be exported, or who do not need to be exported, can realize their dreams being pro here on the home front. So it's so ditto rugby. If we discover talent, we nurture these talents. What is the what provisions does the ecosystem have for them on the professional side? What is the constitution being given on the elite front? We need to create a viable rugby elite ecosystem that ensures that if you're not exported, if your talent is not exported, you can still thrive here in Nigeria. That's my
Yes.
submission.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. You see, this things that you raised now, those points that you raised now, is the same thing as what is happening in football. Okay. A good example is you made mention that most of these youngsters that are playing, these rugby players, they aspire to play as a professional. Are we going to be, exporting all of them to outside the nation? That we need to try and create a sustainable ecosystem in our nation, in our country, just for them to be able to be like, okay, at the end of the day, if you're not able to play, if you're not able to go international, you can always play at home. Oh, we're glad to have Mr. Azeez back. So I'm just addressing what Mr. Telema has raised. Is saying that we need to, before you left, I'm sure that you listened to some of the cogent points that I raised, that there has to be like a system, a working system that all the homegrown players that are not able to play abroad in a professional, stage, that they can always play in Nigeria. That's what he was raising. And I was making a reference to what is happening now. You see, I'm a sport journalist and I've seen things. What is happening, and in as much as I'm sorry, I'm deviating just a little bit, but that is what this gentleman has just raised now. What is happening now? Arsenal won. Everybody's been shouting Arsenal since yesterday. But people are forgetting that we have clubs. We have local clubs. If the British or the British government or this system didn't promote theirs, people won't know Arsenal. People, they always forget all these things.
So if I may, the British government actually had little to no say in the creation or the formation of the Premier League as we know it today.
Yes.
That is wholly private sector.
Yes, I agree.
The British government is only leveraging on the opportunities that has been realized and continuously being discovered. See, for instance, in 2023, according to an EY Ernst & Young report, the British government, the Premier League itself, generated a revenue of no less than £3 billion in tax to the British government. In tax, £3 billion. The question we need to now ask ourselves, because the truth is, we need to take the shift away from government doing this, government doing that, because the real deal is in the private sector being able to take some of these burdens off the government.
Yes.
and deliver the agreed outcomes. Because yes, there's a role the government plays which has to do with supervision, regulatory. There's a role that the private sector plays which has to do with being able to create and sustain the structure on which the sport in view, for instance, in this case now, rugby, can excel. Because the rugby union, the Nigerian Rugby Union, as it were, would definitely play the role of regulating, to ensure that, okay, let me spell it out. So we want to see a situation where, and I know that we have clubs here in Nigeria, rugby teams, clubs in Nigeria, and that have played across two dichotomies, Savannah Conference and what's the other one now? And we've seen. Sorry.
Yeah, Northern League and Southern League. Yeah.
Oh, Northern League and Southern League. Yeah.
Mr. Azeez, I can't hear you. Mr. Azeez.
Northern League and Southern League. That's what he said.
Okay. I can't hear you. Go on.
Oh, okay. So we know that there are clubs that exist. We know that there are teams that exist. Now, the question is the model that has been in the works, or the model that has been followed. Is it thriving? if it's not thriving, what are the challenges? What are the pros? What are the cons? What do we think can be done to? Because here's the beautiful thing: rugby has a remarkably big, large community in Nigeria. Large community in Nigeria. Amongst there was an event that was recently organized and hosted, and which I was in attendance, and much credit to Azeez, the work that they had that is being done. We were in attendance there, and we saw the turnout. We saw the turnout. It wasn't per se a pro sports event, but of course we had pro teams that were involved. But the attendance, the turnout was amazing for the size, for the scale. It was amazing. Now, if we can begin to look at the entire model, and look at how best to rework it. It will take a lot of grunt work, but how best to rework it. The rugby federation at some point will have to seed. We'll have to seed. Perhaps this is a suggestion. We'll have to seed that responsibility to an SPV. And I'm just laying it out here. To have to seed that responsibility to an SPV that would take responsibility for the rugby for rugby as a league, for the pro element of rugby in Nigeria, but also takes recourse or gives recourse to the rugby federation. The rugby federation will provide oversight, but that SPV will take responsibility for organizing and operating a league for rugby in Nigeria, because we need to take a different approach. And this is not about looking at what is happening in America, in UK, in Europe generally. We are looking at systems that we can actually introduce, systems that can be implemented that fits our own bill, and fits what we can deliver to the interest of the audience here in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for that. I want to hear Mr. Azeez. I can hear you.
Telema is my person. Can you hear me now?
No.
Really, I can hear him. I can actually hear him.
Hello. Yeah. It's very clear. I can hear you. So Telema is my person. And, it's all the things you have said.
I can't hear you. Unfortunately, because the thing is, probably you should do what you did the other time. Yes. So it's going to come back. Yeah. We're having technical issues like this. We're really sorry about this to our viewers. Where I really need to apologize, for this. But let me just raise some important things that which you mentioned. You made mention of that there are private entities that are running things during the survey which you carried out. Yeah, that is very true. And I've often said this to people that say it's people like yourself that in the private sector that will help federations, football federations, rugby federations, to grow. In England, I live in England, it's not about the government, but the government has a role to play by creating an enabling environment for them. When it comes to tax, they reduce the tax thing on all these clubs, give them equipment, or maybe reduce tariffs on equipment that are being brought in, or the expertise that are being brought in. So with things like that are in place, rugby or whatever sport it may be, we have a substantial growth. And that is one thing that I want the people, especially the government, to do for our sport development. And like I said, I have an issue with the way we tend to, we've been able to, I don't know what they are doing to us, but they've been able to so much
Can you hear me now?
brainwash us that
Can you hear me now?
tend to celebrate
Yeah,
international
I can hear
competition.
you.
Sorry, can you say
Yeah.
something now? Maybe I can hear him too.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Oh gosh, it's just unfortunate that I can't hear him. So, like I said, it's just unfortunate that what we have back home, or what we've been able to develop in our system, are not being carried, forward by the people, the powers to be, or the people that are in that sector. So you made mention that yes, there has to be a way which, if a player cannot go abroad to go and play, that they should be able to play within the country. But what are we doing? What are we doing? It's just you. Let me just say, maybe you are 0.1% of private sectors that are, that are advocating like this. I don't see companies advocating this kind of a thing for all the sports in Nigeria or in Africa as a whole. We have some powerful people, rich individuals that want to buy clubs in the UK, but they can do that just for our clubs to develop, the sports to develop. So it's a good thing that a private sector stakeholder like yourself is involved with this, and you are putting out what or how we can grow our own system. So I need to commend you on that. We need more hands on the deck like yourself. We need more people to come in to be able to just carry this. So and that is what I've got to say. I'm I'm not meant to say all those things, but I just needed to just chip in all those things that you made mention. Whilst we wait for Mr. Azeez Ladipo to come back on board. So, as a corporate body, what are the areas again which you feel that yourself can work with the federation, like the rugby federation now? Which area do you think you can work with them to develop rugby?
Um, so first things first is and I hope Aziz gets to join. Well, first things first is there's a need to know where the rugby federation is right now, and that is from a a developmental consideration. What's the plan in the next? What's the plan for grassroots development of rugby, and what's the plan for pro sports, for pro sport elite competitions? What's the plan? What's the plan in the immediate? What's the plan in the short term? What's the plan in the medium term? What's the plan in the long term? So that speaks to the fact that there's a need for a strategic plan. If a strategic plan is not in existence, if we don't have that right now, then how can we benchmark or measure where the Rugby Federation is and where it is headed? We It is important for that if we're going to do things, if we're going to see different results, then we must do things differently. We
Yes.
can't afford to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. The world is moving. The world is moving. Yes, the earlier reference you made. I'm an Arsenal fan, and I know the excitement, the thrills that has been ongoing within my community, outside my community. Seeing even the social media content engagement alone
Thank you for that.
has been mind blowing,
Yes.
mind blowing to say the least. And right now, I can imagine how much Arsenal is leveraging social media engagement,
Yes.
for commercial purpose,
Yes.
So it's really about understanding where the rugby federation is. What do they think is their next steps, or what are their next steps how do they want to consummate their next steps, and that has to be communicated, articulated in a strategic plan. It's not just about verbalizing it, it's about what people can see, and it's also about this is which is equally critical, is about being able to assess the commercial readiness of the Rugby Federation vis-a-vis a league system for the sport, the commercial readiness. If we can establish the commercial readiness of the Rugby Federation, then it puts us in a very good position to begin to look at what needs to be put in place, or what is in place already but needs to be reworked in order to reposition the Rugby Federation for commercial readiness and for commercial engagement. That's actually what I believe should be some next steps to be done.
Okay, thank you. I think with that we have to come to the end of this edition. I want to thank you, Telema, for joining us. I want to thank Azeez Ladipo too for taking time off to join us on this episode, and we've been able to highlight and itemize some of the things that needed to be done, where the government needs to come into play, the private sector, the development of the sport itself, in Nigeria. And I'm hoping that at some point this video will get to the right channel, on the right desk, and they'll be able to listen to some of the things we've been able to raise. I like the fact that from the private sector you're able to join us, and Azeez Ladipo too has been able to put forth what he's experiencing as the general manager, or the challenges they are experiencing, and what they've been able to achieve over the years of his tenure. So thank you very much for taking your time to join us. Like I said, Dr. Are want to say thank you for what you are doing, for your leadership role. The sports administrator would say thank you very much for everything. And again, from my own side, I remain Jide Banwo. I'm a freelance sports journalist. I'm based here in the UK. And until we come your way again next time, I want to say thank you and bye from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.